So this is a surreal experience for me. Hello, everybody. I didn't even say anything yet. I just said hello. Hello, welcome to your 150th All-Alumni reunion here at Swarthmore College. My name is Arthur Chu. I was on TV. It is a very strange experience. Let me just say that up front. This has all been an extremely surreal experience, and I'm not sure if I'm actually awake right now as we speak. All right, let's be upfront and honest here first. When I was actually at Swarthmore, I completely crashed and burned. Okay, like that's something people say. Okay, that's something that your commencement speaker every year they say that, and they're kidding when they say that. And if you would actually ask them what they meant, they'd say, you know, they got a couple C's on their transcript, or they got drunk, or they got arrested one time, or, you know, that's something you have to say. Okay, no, I mean, like, I was a super duper senior, okay? I took 6 years to graduate. When I was supposed to graduate in the year 2006, what actually happened on the day that I was supposed to graduate was that I woke up in a pile of my belongings in the dirt outside my dorm because I had no more time to move out, and I still didn't have the courage to pick up the phone and call my parents and tell them what happened. Okay? So that's my Swarthmore story. And we all have Swarthmore stories. I know we all say, when did you have your nervous breakdown? Oh, sophomore year. I'd like to hope it's not typical, you know. But seriously, like the last time I came back for alumni weekend, you know, I said hi to everybody, and I was like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, you know. I'm doing it, I'd have a panic attack. The last time I was here, I was gone. The last time I was here, I lay awake all night trying to think where I would be in 10 years and wondering if I would ever still be alive. You know, among my group of friends, I was the guy who was like, have you seen Arthur lately? Is he still going to class? Is he still eating? Is he still alive? I think so. He was alive last Tuesday. I saw him. He was eating food. Okay, that's good. I mean, what was the whole deal? The self-serving thing that I could say about this whole experience going to Swarthmore being a Jeopardy is, hey, I've always been too smart for my own good. And that's something a lot of Swatties, I think, can say, although it's not entirely accurate. It's not a complete statement. The complete statement was that I was too smart for my own good as someone who was also as sheltered and neurotic as I was. And I was too smart to know that sometimes there are times to walk away from an argument, even when you're sure you're right. Because I was smart enough that growing up, when I antagonized teachers or other students, and I knew I was right, I could prove that I was right. And I would get points for proving that I was right. I got extra credit for arguing down my teacher about an urban legend he'd heard about glass flowing in windows and being a super cool liquid, and it's like, no, that's actually an urban myth, and fought with him and took up the whole class and got extra credit for it, when really what he should have done was sent me to detention for being a jerk and derailing the class. But I learned all the wrong lessons growing up. I learned that you can rationalize anything, any of the social conventions you don't want to put up with because it's too much trouble for you. You can find an argument, and if you're smart enough, you can talk people down, which is why when I came to Swarthmore, I only packed clothes for one season out of the year. And everyone who saw me wearing one of 5 pairs of t-shirts and shorts. You know, I was too smart to understand how to compartmentalize, and I'm going to step into a dangerous minefield territory here, but I was too smart to learn that most people who are raised in a fundamentalist religious environment learn that there's so far that you can take it, but not farther. And that if you really take seriously what you're taught and you believe that everyone's going to go to hell because they believe the wrong thing, then you would really become a crazy person and try to tell everybody the truth. So when I came to Swarthmore, I was very argumentative. I felt like I had the right to succeed at all my classes without working. I believed that no one had the right to tell me what to do, and I wanted to tell everyone about Jesus. And you can kind of imagine how things worked out for me there, you know. I'm absolutely sure whoever from the alumni department is standing in this room right now is getting really worried right now. I didn't give them any notes. I didn't write anything down until today. I was like, I didn't write anything down whenever I was in a class at Swarthmore. Why should I do that now? And, you know, now I'm already here and it's too late to kick me out. That's the problem when you're a celebrity. You can negotiate this kind of thing. But, yeah, I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk SWAT, maybe SWAT's completely changed since I was here, but, you know, this might be overreaching, but I sort of embody the reductio ad absurdum of the negative stereotype of a Swarthmorean, or as we called it, SWATty, or as they called it in the 1960s and 1970s, a term that we should still use, except that it's unfair to the developmentally disabled Swarthmorons. That there's a certain personality type of somebody who is very intellectual, very invested in their own verbal reasoning skills, who loves to read and to write and to argue and to debate, and who would live in the ivory tower for the rest of their lives if you gave them the chance, you know. And, you know, you throw in a few personal hygiene issues, you throw in some ADHD, and you got me, right? And I was too Swarthmore for Swarthmore. I was too nerdy for the nerd school. So I joined the club for nerds in the nerd school, which was SWIL, which we now call sci-fi. And, you know, I was the misfit there, too. I was the weird guy. There's always another level, you know, that you can take it. And some things never change. So the question that people ask when they ask me the question that I'm tired of answering by now, which is how do you succeed in Jeopardy, the first half of the answer is just be a weird person. You can't teach that. You can't inculcate that. You're either are weird or you aren't. And if you're not going to put in the effort to become weird because it sucks. You don't want to. If you want to succeed in Jeopardy, you want to be the guy who derailed his college interview for Swarthmore, arguing for like half an hour with his interviewer about the definition of sexual assault. And I was right. And I don't even know if he knows who I am, but he was wrong. You're the kind of person who the night before you have an important final to take, you are taking a wiki walk and you find the Captain Planet wiki page and you start arguing with someone about whether or not it was Ted Turner creating Stalinist propaganda or not. And, you know, and they were wrong too. You're the kind of person who spends less time on any of your college papers than you did making a newsletter for SWIL, where in a game of one-upsmanship of how many gimmicks you could put into the newsletter, you end up writing a newsletter about this week's events in the form of a series of parody song lyrics to the Beatles' seminal album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. I can work all the songs in there, but I'll send it to you if you're interested. And no one can teach that. No one can take it away from you, you know, no matter what happens. And see, I've heard a lot of commencement addresses this year, and they always say, you know, be different, be weird. And I wish they wouldn't say that, because if you are different, and you are weird, that's not going to change. You have that. But a lot of the weird, different people, the wonderful, quirky, neurotic, intelligent, erudite people out of Swarthmore end up dead by the time they're 40 years old, okay? A lot of those people end up dying of drug overdose, throwing themselves in front of a train, shooting themselves, shooting a bunch of other people, and then shooting themselves, which is even worse. Or they live in their parents' basement and cycle through dead-end jobs for half a lifetime, writing angry screeds on the internet about how the system is screwed, people are screwed, life is unfair, and then they hit late middle age, their cholesterol's at 280 and they stroke out. And that's really the same thing as dying young, except it takes longer, so it's worse. All right? And why is that? Aristotle, oh, here I am with Aristotle. Aristotle said there's two kinds of wisdom. He grouped them into two major kinds of wisdom. There is Sophia, which is the wisdom of knowing things. And it is important. In fact, Aristotle said it was the more important kind in his view. And Swarthmore students come here with a lot of hunger for Sophia, for knowing things, and he'll prove that they're right. The flip side, the side that he said that cannot be taught, that can only come with age and experience, is what he called phronesis, which is translated prudence by a lot of people. And he said that's different from technique, which is skill, and technology, the ability to do things, to do specific things, to find techniques for doing things. We have a ton of that in our society. If anything, our society worships that even more than Sophia. Our society is filled with life hacks and technological tools and advice on how to optimize your day. But phronesis is not that. Phronesis is the ability to know what the hell it is you're supposed to be doing. It is whatever it is that you want to do. Yeah, you can get a degree in it, you can learn how to do it well, but is it what you should be doing? Is it what you want to do? Is it what will make you happy and will make a difference in the world when you do it? You know, we don't teach that because it can't really be taught. It can only be experienced. And the thing is, it took me a long time to get there. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't gotten there. There's a lot of people whose narrative of Swarthmore is the Swarthmore bubble, and to some extent that's a valid criticism, that here we care a lot about learning for its own sake, and that's not a bad thing. We care a lot about knowledge for its own sake, but we don't gain a lot of practical wisdom. I'm actually going to say the opposite of that I had a tough time at Swarthmore, but at the same time, if it hadn't been for my experience here, a lot of other things in my life wouldn't have happened. What are the three things that Swarthmore did to teach me this phronesis, this prudence, or the ability to just, you know, do what it is that you need to do? First thing is that Swarthmore kicked my ass, all right? And the world kicks your ass too. You know, it's very hard to go through your whole life without getting your ass kicked. But the good thing about Swarthmore, the thing that everyone complains about Swarthmore, not everyone, maybe it doesn't benefit everyone, it benefited me, is that Swarthmore kicks your ass and it tells you why. The world will kick your ass and the world will give you a pink slip, or the world will give you a past due notice, or the world will just say thank you for the interview and never call you back. Swarthmore will kick your ass, and then Swarthmore will drag you by the collar and rub your face in it and tell you, this is why you're being stupid. This is how you're being stupid. These are the examples of, despite the way in which you think your stupidity in this case is original and unique to you, it is actually part of a global pattern of stupidity that has been repeated over and over again and always ends in the same stupid results. And for some people, you never get over your own insistence that you must be right until you are shoved into that situation where you're no longer the smartest person in the room. Or if you are the smartest person in the room, it doesn't matter that you're the smartest person in the room. Where you learn that being the smartest person in the room means you can still be wrong. And the litany of ways in which very smart people can be very wrong. Or even if you're right, the way being right doesn't mean you won't fail. And the millions of ways that people who are right can fail. If nothing else, that should be the motto of the history department at Swarthmore College. The million ways that people who are smart and right can fail. The second thing is teaching you how to fail. After kicking my ass, I will now quote one of the great works of literature in Western civilization, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, wherein Charlie Brown invests his entire self, his entire sense of himself into this spelling bee. That is the one thing that he wants to accomplish. And he motivates himself by saying that if he does this, he will always have the one achievement, no matter what else happens to him in life, of having been a spelling bee champion. Whereas if he fails in front of everybody, it will always be captured on television. He can never take it back. It will be as though the world has come to an end. And he does fail. And he does screw up. And it is on television. And everyone calls him and tells him he failed. And he has to hear it over and over again how he failed. And at the very end of the film, Linus says to him, yeah, all of that happened, but you know what? The world didn't come to an end. I used to think I was an A student. I didn't know who I would be if I wasn't an A student. That was who I was. I was the smartest man in the room. If I wasn't that, I didn't know who I was. Well, Swarthmore took that away from me, and I was still there. And when you are left with yourself still there, and what you thought was your identity taken away from you, you have to figure out who you really are. You have to figure out something to be when that's been taken away from you. And that's the third thing. Swarthmore gave me the chance to figure out what it is I really wanted. Gave me something worth fighting for. Swarthmore is a place where a lot of people, for the first time in their lives, have to do something hard for the first time in their lives. And doing the hard things that you don't want to do is the whole problem of being alive. It's every problem we have in the world boils down to there's a hard thing that we know we should do, but we aren't doing it. And Confucius said that it was by the time he was 70 years old that finally, you know, whatever it is his heart inclined to was the right thing to do. In other words, he could relax. I'm not 70, I'm 30, and I'm still just barely getting there. But Swarthmore taught me that hard things aren't so hard when you have a good reason to do them. When you're just kind of drifting through life and you're going after that immediate high, that immediate validation of being right, of winning, of getting praised, of getting petted, life is very hard because that high gets harder and harder to find. But if there's something important that you want to get in life, then if you have that important thing in mind, the little humiliations and setbacks and rejections along the way aren't such a big deal. Swarthmore is a place where for the first time in my life I had to interact with people who sat around the rest of us privileged kids playing misery poker and talking about our papers and our crappy work-study jobs and the all-nighters that we pulled, and just saying, you know, I'm here on financial aid, my mom worked 3 jobs, you know, overtime so that I could, just to afford for me to go here, even with the amount of financial aid that we got. Swarthmore's where I met people who have physical disabilities for the first time in my life and had to deal with that every day, where I met my wife, who developed a physical disability while she was here, and learned that people who work a lot harder than I do, and try a lot harder, and have a much bigger bank of, you know, credit with the world, that if the world were a fair place, they should have gotten everything they wanted. They can have that taken away, like that, because of genes, because of an accident, you know? Swarthmore is where I learned a lot about privilege and oppression, and I hated activists when I was here. I'm gonna just say that. But, yeah, I love being a jerk and arguing with people and having these intellectual debates. And there's a lot of intellectual debates to be had. And you know what? There are a lot of ways to fail at being an activist. It is very possible. It is very easy to fail at being an activist. You can fail by making mountains out of molehills. You can fail by having the wrong tone and being too strident and alienating your allies. You can fail by thinking that you're in it to change the world, and really you're in it for the sound of your own voice and to raise your own status. But you know what? Everything worth doing has a path that's littered with failures. The worst way to fail is to not try doing it. And the only way that you can succeed is to become addicted to failing, is to fail and say, I failed, I'm still here, and I'm going to pick myself up and go try something else. I'm failed, I'm still here, but I have something important to me that I want to do. I have a wife who got screwed over by life, and even if I don't care about what happens to me, I care about what happens to her, so I have to make something of the hand that's been dealt me. There's a whole world of people out there for whom life isn't fair, and for whom life is way more unfair than it's been for me. And if I just give in and give up and become one of those assholes on the internet typing about how the world's unfair and I hate my life and I die at the age of 50, then I'm letting them down, not just me. You know, all other addictions are an attempt to avoid that addiction, the addiction to failure. And that's the only path that you can become successful through. So, you know, Swarthmore taught me a lot of things outside the classroom. Almost everything important it taught me outside the classroom. Most of the important things it taught me in the classroom were how to fail in the classroom and how not to put all of my own self-worth in the classroom. Swarthmore taught me that making friends and maintaining relationships is one of the hardest things you can do, and it is much more important than this little competition that we have of how much money you make and how many degrees you have. Swarthmore taught me that this thing that I'm doing right now, talking to people and communicating to people, is one of the hardest things that you can do. The thing that I value most is that I took some theater classes at Swarthmore and I got like a B average in them. Okay, that I did something that was really hard and unnatural for me, which was to try to communicate to other people and put all my focus on other people and how they were reacting to me instead of what was going on inside my own head. And if I had never done that, I had never started on that path, nothing else that's currently going on well in my life could have ever happened. Swarthmore taught me that. Swarthmore taught me that we nerds have, you know, I talked a lot in the past few weeks and a lot about what's about nerds and nerd culture. We have the most powerful drug in the world. The human brain, the human mind, the human imagination is a hell of a drug. And inside your own imagination, you can get lost. You can get lost in books, you can get lost in theories, you can get lost in movies, and you can get lost in World of Warcraft, you can get lost in an imaginary world where things make sense to you, where things work out the way they're supposed to for you, where the world is OSHA compliant, where the world has soft landings and safety nets, and there aren't any sharp corners or rough edges. And in the real world, there's sharp edges everywhere. There's broken glass littering the streets. It's not fair. In the real world, things don't make sense. And in the real world, you have to do things that aren't fair and don't make sense in order to make any of those things you wish were true, true. So, Swarthmore taught me to get over myself. And it was a long and painful lesson. But if I hadn't had that lesson, if I hadn't had a tough time at Swarthmore, professors who told me that I was wrong, students who told me that I was wrong, if I hadn't been challenged and frustrated in so many ways, I would never have, graduated to the middle of the recession. I would never have swallowed my pride and gotten a horrible desk job that led to another horrible desk job, that led to another horrible desk job, and sucked up and played to the system in order to survive. I would never have worked retail, and while I was working retail, listened and seen all the things that happened in the years that I worked retail and said, this is screwed up, this needs to change. I would never have had the language to understand this system isn't fair, and it's not fair in a way that's bigger than me. And when I got the call from Sony Pictures Entertainment saying, hey, your name came up and we want you to be on this game show on Jeopardy, are you free? I would not have, people ask me, what about Jeopardy? I'm going to finally talk about Jeopardy. What is it that I did that was so interesting on Jeopardy? I went online, I Googled Jeopardy strategy. I said, this is what you have to do to win Jeopardy, and I did it. And it wasn't natural for me, and it wasn't fun. In fact, it was a huge pain. It was really annoying. It was, if I hadn't been to Swarthmore, I would never have crammed for a really annoying test that I didn't care about. And that's what it was. And most people don't. Who wants to spend even a month memorizing the names of all the capitals of all the countries in the world? Who wants to watch Jeopardy? Who wants to memorize the, details about reality shows and Miley Cyrus songs, which is also half of what's on the show? People don't, but you know what? I don't care. It doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. That's money out there, okay? And no, I'm serious. That's tens of thousands of dollars. That's money that means that if my wife wants to work on her novel, she has time to do it. If I want to, pursue an acting career, I have to do it. Or if I don't care about me, that's money that can feed, literally hundreds of thousands of families, in Africa or in Southeast Asia if I donate it to the right places. That's money that could be researching cures for cancer. And people who say I play too aggressively on the show or that they wouldn't go that far to run the show, I'm like, okay, but realistically, even if I don't deserve the money, is the money doing more good sitting in the coffers of the Sony Pictures Entertainment Corporation? Is it? Or is it doing more good? Could it do more good if I took it and I used it for something? And when I first started getting calls from media outlets, because people were like, hey, you're that guy in that game show, and a lot of people are angry about you, and we want you to investigate why that is. I could have just hung up the phone, and 99% of people probably would. I didn't want to do that, okay? I didn't want to go in front of a camera in front of a bunch of people and say, well, gosh, people don't like people who skip around on the board a lot, but I do it because, that's how I win the game. For 40 times. But why'd I do it? Well, if I didn't do it, they would have gone and done a news story about something else. And do I deserve to be a celebrity? Do I deserve to be in the news? No. But is there something I feel I have to say that I could do, even with a little sliver of attention from the mainstream media that matters? Yeah, I did. And, when people were saying, maybe you could write a column about, personal finance or about investing strategy. Maybe. But instead, what did I do? I was like, I'm really mad about this shooting that happened in Santa Barbara, and I'm going to write a column about it. And it was a random thing. It was not aligned with the Arthur Chu brand, whatever that means. But you know what? If I don't write something, if I write something else, this moment's going to pass by, and do I deserve to be saying something? I don't know, but I have something to say. there's something at stake. It's not about me, it's about whether I can do the thing that needs to be done, whether I can achieve what I care about in this moment. It's not about who I am, the kind of person that I am. All those things are mutable, all those things can change. The kind of person that I was when I was in college, I wouldn't want to be friends with now. You know, I've changed in a million ways. The important thing isn't who I am or who I was. The important thing is what you do. And this is a completely different speech from what I think I was originally thinking I was going to say when I want to come up and talk about Jeopardy, but it's the important thing that I have to say. Winning at Jeopardy is a totally random, probably very inefficient way to make a difference in the world, but anything that you can do it, you know? And that's all I have to say about that, if anyone has any questions.